Maybe this is a sense of empowerment too. You ever dobbed anybody in for a COVID breach or a mask problem or a house party or something? 96900 693 13 13 32. I was sent overnight a photograph of a state MP. He's in what looks to be a takeaway food shop. He's talking to the staff. He's not wearing his mask properly. I'll speak to him in a moment. On the line, it's a chicken shop in Colac, in fact, is a man who sent the photograph. Tosh Finnegan, good morning.
Morning, Neil.
When did it happen?
Happened last night at about, would have been about 6:15 or so.
And what happened?
So I was sitting in my store next door to this this takeaway store. I run a music store in Colac, and I was sort of closing up for the evening and doing some of my bookwork on my computer, and I noticed my local MP, Richard Reardon, walking past the shop, and he was going into the chicken shop next door, and I noticed he just sort of looked at the QR code scanning and then just waltzed in without.
So he didn't scan. He didn't scan in.
QR code.
All right.
Didn't scan in. I thought that was a bit weird, so I thought, well, I might pull him up on this. So I decided to leave my shop and went in next door, scanned in and bought a drink and waited patiently in line until he was done with his order and went to buy my drink and asked, if he'd, said it was good to see he was using the QR codes to scan in, at which point he said something to the effect of, oh, well, of course, and which at that point I sort of got up him for the rent, I guess, I must admit.
And you told him off for not doing it, yeah?
Told him off for not doing it, and he walked out. But I also, while he was placing his order, I noticed he was leaned over the counter and chatting to, placing his order with a staff member in this business, and had his mask down around his neck in a shop with about sort of 12 or so people in it, and he was the only person sort of not wearing a mask, I guess. Okay. So I thought, well, that's a bit weird. So I thought I'd snap a photo and it seems to be rules for thee, not for me, unfortunately.
Well, you've done that. I'll speak to him in a moment. But it's interesting. You've got any agenda with him? Have you had any run-ins with him in the past?
Never really had run-ins with him in the past. I mean, obviously, as you would know, I was the whistleblower in the Red Shirts matter as a former employee of the Victorian Labor Party. I like to hold power to account where I see things being done wrong, regardless of who's doing, who's undertaking or engaging in the wrongdoing, whether it be, Liberal MPs, Labor MPs, Green MPs, or anything like that.
Well, you're doing okay because you're struggling a bit. Are you okay now? I'm glad to hear you're getting on with your life, a little business out in the country. You going all right?
Yeah. So I'm running I might as well give it a plug. I'm running a guitar store called Toshco Music down in Colac in Victoria, and decided to open during COVID, and it's been quite good for my mental health, and I'm enjoying running a business rather than dealing with
politics. Yeah,
rather than working in politics or working as a journo. It's much more relaxing, believe it or not.
All right. Thank you, Tosh Finnegan. Yeah, whistleblower in the Red Shirts. So he blows a whistle on both sides. I'll give him points for that. Richard Reardon is the Liberal MP for Polwarth. That's what Tosh Finnegan was talking about. He's on the line. Fair cop, Governor?
Oh, yes, it is, Neil, but it does raise the problem that we're seeing increasingly around the community where people want to take it on but don't always know the full context. So, yes, Mr Finnegan, as you pointed out, he's a community campaigner, and good on him. He's called me out, and he certainly made sure everyone in the shop knew that he'd called me out. But what he didn't tell you, Neil, was Boo, who's a wonderful newcomer to Australia, and he and his wife worked flat out in that chicken shop. They had a fire, burnt the shop down or burnt the shop out in the end of March. He just opened this week. It was to great excitement in the whole community, and as Jake pointed out, the shop was pretty full last night because the whole town has really rallied behind charcoal chicken and Boo getting back on his feet. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine most small food businesses being shut for over 200 days for the last year. The shop then burns down. You open up, you want everyone to support. And to be honest, Neil, I did have the mask down. I don't deny that one bit. And the reason I did is Boo's, English is very much a second language for him. I was communicating with him. I was congratulating him on getting back on his feet and opening up. And quite frankly, Neil, We have COVID, we have restrictions, but we can't lose humanity. We can't lose our sense of connectedness. And quite frankly,
that's true. But I don't know if it just
you need to communicate. You need to communicate.
I agree.
That's what I do in my job.
But if we assume that the mask rules are there for a reason, no matter how good unless you're taking it off to give somebody artificial resuscitation, I don't know if it's justified, is it? I mean, I can see your frustration. I can see what you're trying to do. But the point is, you're leaning across towards a bloke with your mask down. If you've been in big bad Melbourne, who knows what you were taking back to him?
Look, yeah, Neil, that's fair enough, but we're intelligent people. We can make rational, sensible discussions. We haven't got COVID west of Geelong. We haven't had it. I've been here. It's safe. It was a reasonable precaution to take. Keeping in mind,
when were you last in Melbourne? When were you last in Melbourne?
Back when Parliament sat, Neil, last Friday, a week ago. Yeah. And in that time we're pretty limited. But it's also just pointing out, Neil, that, we've got to get on with our lives and we've got to live. And quite frankly, there's a whole raft of reasons for communication. There's lots of people in our community who really struggle with masks. And, people need to be able to make good judgments and fair judgments when they're being safe. I felt I was being safe. Okay.
It's look, I understand what you're saying again. It's a big risk to say, well, individuals decide whether it's safe or not. What about the QR code? Did you not use that on the way in?
Well, once again, Mr. Finnegan, he wasn't there the whole time. He was, in fact, in his shop with his friends with the door closed, and we won't go into whether Mr. Finnegan should have or shouldn't have had his door closed and socialising with his friends in his shop, but we won't make judgment on that.
No, you've just done that. That's called dog whistling.
Vu, luckily for him, was flat out. I'd come in, put my order in and returned again. So I've actually checked into Vu's shop twice in one night. So you did, and my QR codes will verify that that's the case. Mr. Finnegan,
So you're saying, hang on. You're saying you did use the QR code system to go in the first place, did you? I
did it on the way out, Neil.
Not on the way in.
And
so not on the way right in. There,
he has one at the counter. Oh yeah, no, he but I
mean, look, I don't want to get in a fight about it. It's not a major issue, but I don't want to dud the bloke if he's saying the right thing. And you didn't do it on the way in.
Everything he said is true, Neil. Okay. Everything he said is true, and I don't deny that one bit. But I scanned on the way out, and I returned to the shop an hour or so later when the next rung of chickens were cooked, and scanned back in then. And the reason was, I was with my younger daughter, and she'd gone in, and I'd followed her in, and would have scanned in on the way out, and scanned in on the way in the second time. So I've been recorded twice. I fully support the scanning in. It's a great concept, but rushing to the media to dob people in. It's fair enough.
All right, thank you very much, Richard Reardon, Liberal MP for Polwarth, and yes, there's a photograph of him leaning across talking to a bloke with his mask down around his neck, and he clearly hasn't scanned in on the way in, but has on the way out. I guess a few people will do that too. I don't know. It's not a major issue. It's just, and I don't think that he's pulling any rank because he's an MP or anything like that, of course. But it's not a major issue. But I just want to. When somebody raises something like that, you really just need to face it and address it and say, well, yeah, fair cop, and I think it is a fair cop